Rebecca hadn't slept well in weeks. Every night she'd lie awake staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment, counting the days since she'd lost her job at the downtown hotel. 3 months. 92 days to be exact. She knew because she'd been counting every single one of them. The morning started like all the others lately. She woke up with that familiar knot in her stomach, the one that came from worry and hunger mixing together. Her phone showed 6:47 a.m. She didn't need an alarm anymore. Stress had become her wake-up call. She sat up slowly on the old couch that had become her bed. Her actual bedroom was empty now. She'd sold the bed frame 2 weeks ago for $40. The mattress went a week after that. When you're desperate, you learn quickly what you can live without. Rebecca walked to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her seemed like a stranger. Her cheeks were hollow. Dark circles had taken up permanent residence under her eyes. Her hair, which she used to keep so nicely styled for work, now just hung limp around her shoulders. She was only 34, but lately, she felt like she'd aged 10 years. The worst part wasn't even her own struggle. It was being separated from her daughter. Little Amy was staying with Rebecca's sister across town. Just temporarily, she kept telling herself. Just until she could get back on her feet. But temporary was stretching into months now, and every day apart from her 7-year-old felt like a knife to the heart. She'd talk to Amy on the phone every night. "When are you coming home, Mommy?" Amy would ask, her small voice hopeful, and Rebecca would force brightness into her voice and say, "Soon, sweetheart, very soon." Then she'd hang up and cry herself to sleep. Today, Rebecca had to make a decision. She walked to her purse and dumped out the contents onto the kitchen counter. Coins scattered everywhere. A few crumpled dollar bills. She counted it all carefully. $8.47. That was it. That was everything she had left in the world. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. She'd had half a can of soup then. The other half was still in the fridge, but she'd been saving it for dinner tonight. That was how she lived now. 1 small meal a day, sometimes less. The rent was already 2 weeks late. Her landlord, Mr. Patterson, had been patient, but his patience was wearing thin. He'd slipped a note under her door yesterday. She had until the end of the week. 5 more days, then what? She didn't want to think about it. Rebecca picked up the bills and coins from the counter. She made a decision. She needed to eat something real. Something warm.
Maybe if she had a proper meal, she could think more clearly.
Maybe she could figure out a plan. She got dressed in the same jeans and sweater she'd worn for the past 3 days. They hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight, more than she could afford to lose. After brushing her teeth and pulling her hair into a ponytail, she grabbed her worn jacket and headed out. The November air hit her face, cold and sharp. She didn't have a car anymore. That had been sold 2 months ago. Now she walked everywhere. The diner was about 15 minutes away on foot. It was the cheapest place she knew. As she walked, she passed other people on the street. Everyone looked so normal, so put together. They carried coffee cups from fancy shops. They talked on their phones about weekend plans and dinner reservations. Rebecca wondered if any of them had ever felt this kind of desperation. The kind where you're one missed meal away from collapsing. She used to be one of those people. She used to stop for a latte every morning before work. She used to take Amy out for pancakes on Saturday mornings. They'd sit in the booth by the window, and Amy would get chocolate chips in her pancakes and they'd laugh about silly things. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. The diner came into view. Rosie's Place, the faded sign read. It had been there for decades, a neighborhood staple. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and a menu that hadn't changed since the 80s. But it was cheap and the portions were decent. Rebecca pushed open the door. A little bell chimed above her head. The smell of coffee and bacon hit her and her stomach twisted with hunger. A few people sat scattered around the restaurant. A couple in the corner booth. An elderly man at the counter reading a newspaper. A woman with 2 kids who were coloring on their placemats. "Sit anywhere, honey," called out the waitress from behind the counter. Her name tag said Diane. Rebecca slid into a booth near the back. She didn't want to be seen. Lately, she felt like her poverty was written all over her face. Like everyone could tell just by looking at her how far she'd fallen. Diane came over with a menu and a glass of water. "What can I get you, sweetheart?" Rebecca studied the menu even though she'd already decided before she came in. She had to pick something that would fill her up, but wouldn't cost much. Could I get the soup and half sandwich combo, please? Sure thing. Tomato soup, okay? And the sandwich is turkey today. That's perfect. Thank you. Diane smiled warmly and walked away. Rebecca noticed she hadn't written down the order. This place was small enough that the waitress probably remembered everything. Rebecca sipped her water and looked around the diner. This was what her life had become. Nursing a glass of water in a cheap diner, about to spend most of her last few dollars on one meal. She thought about her old life, the job she'd loved at the hotel, the steady paycheck, the security of knowing she could provide for her daughter. The layoffs had come out of nowhere. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired. She'd only been there 18 months. Not long enough to have any real protection. They'd given her 2 weeks' pay and a wish for good luck. She'd spent the first month confident she'd find something else quickly. She had experience. She had good references, but rejection after rejection had worn her down. The economy was tough. Everyone was hiring, the news said, but apparently not people like her. Too qualified for minimum wage jobs, not qualified enough for the better positions. She'd applied to over 100 places. Nothing. Her savings had disappeared faster than she'd expected. First the car payment, then groceries, then rent, then utilities. She'd tried to make smart choices to stretch every dollar, but money only stretches so far. Diane returned with her meal. The soup steamed in a white bowl. The half sandwich looked fresh, with lettuce and tomato peeking out from between the bread slices. Rebecca's mouth watered. Here you go, hun. Anything else I can get you? No, this is great. Thank you so much. Rebecca looked down at the food in front of her. It was simple, basic. But to her right now it looked like a feast. She picked up the spoon, ready to take that first warm sip of soup. That's when she heard the commotion near the front door. She looked up to see a small child standing just inside the entrance, a boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. His clothes were dirty and too thin for the cold weather outside. His face was smudged with dirt, but it was his eyes that caught Rebecca's attention. They were wide and desperate, the eyes of someone who hadn't eaten in far too long. I'm sorry, but you can't just come in here, Diane was saying, her voice firm but not unkind. If you're not ordering anything, you need to leave. Please, the boy said, his voice small and shaky. I'm just so hungry. Do you have any food? Anything at all? Rebecca watched as the other diners looked away. The couple in the corner booth suddenly became very interested in their plates. The elderly man at the counter kept his eyes on his newspaper. The mother with her 2 children quickly ushered them to look down at their coloring. Nobody wanted to see the hungry child. It was easier to pretend he wasn't there, but Rebecca couldn't look away. She saw herself in that boy. She saw her own daughter. She saw what could happen if things got even worse, if she couldn't turn things around. The boy's shoulders slumped as he turned to leave. His small frame seemed to fold in on itself, defeated. Rebecca looked down at her meal. The soup, the sandwich. Her last $8 turned into food. The only real meal she'd have for days. She thought about Amy. She thought about what kind of mother she wanted to be. What kind of person she wanted to be even when she had nothing left to give. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, she heard her own voice calling out across the diner. Wait. The word hung in the air of the diner. Everyone looked up. The boy stopped at the door, his small hand still on the handle. Diane paused mid-step, a coffee pot in her hand. Even the couple in the corner booth glanced over. Rebecca's heart was pounding. What was she doing? She needed this food. She needed every bit of it. But looking at that child, she couldn't let him walk away with nothing. Come here, she said, her voice softer now. She gestured to the seat across from her. The boy's eyes widened. He looked uncertain, like maybe he'd heard wrong. He glanced at Diane, who gave him a small nod. Slowly, carefully, he walked toward Rebecca's booth. He moved like someone who'd learned to be cautious, to not trust good things too easily. He slid into the seat across from her. Up close, Rebecca could see just how thin he was. His cheeks were sunken. His wrists looked like twigs poking out from his 2 short sleeves. There was a small cut on his chin, probably a few days old. What's your name? Rebecca asked gently. Tommy, he said quietly, his eyes fixed on the food on the table. Hi, Tommy, I'm Rebecca. She picked up the plate with the sandwich and the bowl of soup and slid them across the table to him. This is for you." Tommy stared at the food like he couldn't believe it was real. "Really? Really? Go ahead, eat." She didn't have to tell him twice. The boy grabbed the sandwich with both hands and took a huge bite. Then another. He was eating so fast Rebecca worried he might choke. "Slow down, sweetheart. It's okay. Take your time," she said. Tommy nodded but kept eating like he was afraid the food might disappear if he didn't finish it quickly. Rebecca watched him and felt her throat tighten. When was the last time this child had eaten? Yesterday? The day before? Diane came over to the table. She looked at Rebecca for a long moment, then at Tommy. Something changed in her expression. It softened. "Let me get him some milk," Diane said quietly. "I don't have enough to pay for it," Rebecca admitted. "It's on the house," Diane said, and walked away before Rebecca could respond. Tommy had moved on to the soup now, spooning it into his mouth. Some of it dripped onto his dirty shirt, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Rebecca asked Diane for a glass of water for herself. It was all she could afford now. "Where are you from, Tommy?" Rebecca asked when he'd slowed down a little. The boy looked up from his soup. His eyes were brown, she noticed. Deep brown like chocolate. Amy had eyes like that. "Around," he said vaguely. "Me and Grandma Rose, we've been staying different places. Is your grandma nearby?" Tommy shook his head. "She's back at the place where we sleep sometimes, under the bridge on 5th Street. She's not feeling good today. She told me to try to find some food." Rebecca's heart sank. This child was living on the streets. A little boy, no more than 6 or 7, sleeping under a bridge. It was November. The nights were getting cold. "How old are you, Tommy?" 6 3/4, he said with a touch of pride. Like that 3/4 mattered a lot. 6 years old. The same age as Amy had been just a year ago. Diane brought the milk, and Tommy drank half of it in one long gulp. A small milk mustache appeared on his upper lip, and Rebecca smiled despite everything. "Thank you," Tommy said suddenly, looking right at Rebecca. "Thank you so much." "You're welcome, honey. Nobody ever—" he started, then stopped. He looked down at his hands. "People don't usually help us." Rebecca felt something crack inside her chest. How many times had this little boy been turned away? How many times had he been invisible to the people walking past him? "Well, I'm happy I could help today," she said. They sat in silence for a moment. Rebecca sipped her water and tried not to think about how hungry she still was. She'd made the right choice. She knew she had. But that didn't make her empty stomach stop growling. Tommy finished the last of the soup and sat back, looking more relaxed than he had since he'd walked in. "That was really good," he said. Before Rebecca could respond, the bell above the diner door chimed again. A woman rushed in, and Rebecca had never seen someone look so panicked. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair cut short. She wore an expensive-looking coat, the kind with real buttons and perfect stitching. Her eyes swept the diner frantically, then she saw Tommy. "There you are," she cried out, rushing toward their booth. "Oh, thank God, there you are." Tommy's face lit up. "Grandma Helen." But this woman didn't look like someone who lived under a bridge. She looked wealthy, put together. Her shoes probably cost more than Rebecca's rent. The woman reached their booth and immediately pulled Tommy into a tight hug. "I've been looking everywhere for you." "Everywhere!" "You scared me half to death." "I'm sorry, Grandma Helen," Tommy said, his voice muffled against her coat. "I just wanted to walk around. You can't just wander off like that." "We were supposed to stay by the car." The woman was crying now, tears running down her carefully made-up face. She pulled back and looked Tommy over. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. I was just hungry." The woman looked at the empty dishes on the table, then at Rebecca. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were sharp. "Taking everything in, did you feed him?" she asked. Rebecca nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The woman closed her eyes for a moment like she was trying to compose herself. When she opened them again, they were full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much. I don't know what would have happened if—" She trailed off, not wanting to finish that thought. "It was nothing," Rebecca said quietly. "It wasn't nothing." The woman slid into the booth next to Tommy, keeping one arm around him like she was afraid he might disappear again. "I'm Helen Chen. This is my grandson, Rebecca. And it's nice to meet you." Rebecca's mind was trying to catch up. This boy had said he lived under a bridge with someone named Grandma Rose. But this was clearly his real grandmother, And she wasn't homeless. What was going on? Helen must have seen the confusion on Rebecca's face. We had a disagreement in the car, she explained. I told Tommy we had to go to a doctor's appointment and he didn't want to go. He's scared of doctors after his last visit. Before I knew it, he'd unbuckled and run out when we stopped at a red light. I've been driving around the neighborhood for the past hour trying to find him. I wasn't trying to be bad, Tommy said in a small voice. I know, sweetheart. I know. Helen hugged him tighter. She looked at Rebecca again. Did you pay for his meal? Yes, but really it's fine. How much was it? Please, you don't need to. How much? Helen's voice was kind but firm. $6.47, Rebecca admitted. Helen opened her expensive purse and pulled out her wallet. Rebecca couldn't help but notice how full it was. The woman took out a $20 bill and set it on the table. That's too much, Rebecca protested. It's not nearly enough. Helen looked at her carefully, really looked at her. Rebecca felt exposed, like this woman could see everything. The hunger, the struggle, the desperation she tried so hard to hide. You didn't have to help him, Helen continued. Most people wouldn't have, especially, she paused, especially when they don't have much themselves, Rebecca finished quietly. Helen nodded. May I ask you something personal? Rebecca shrugged. What did she have to lose at this point? That meal you gave Tommy, was that your only meal today? Rebecca considered lying, but she was so tired of pretending. Yes, it was going to be my only meal for the next couple of days, actually. She expected pity in Helen's eyes. She'd seen that look before from her sister, from former co-workers, from the people at the unemployment office. But that's not what she saw. Instead, Helen looked at her with something that seemed like respect. And you still gave it to him. He needed it more than me. No, Helen said softly. You both needed it. But you gave it to him anyway, she paused. That says everything about who you are. Rebecca felt her eyes start to water. She blinked quickly. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry in public anymore. Diane came back over. Can I get you folks anything? She asked Helen. Yes, please. Whatever this young woman wants. A full meal. Actually, make it 2 meals. She can take one home. Helen looked at Rebecca. Please let me do this. Rebecca wanted to say no. She'd learned to hate charity, but her stomach was so empty it hurt. And the thought of having food to take home, food for tomorrow. Okay, she whispered. Thank you, Helen smiled. It was a genuine smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Thank you. You gave me back the most important thing in my life. She squeezed Tommy's shoulder. You can't put a price on that. While Rebecca ordered, she got the meatloaf special, which came with mashed potatoes and green beans, and Diane promised to pack up another one to go. Helen and Tommy talked quietly. Rebecca overheard bits and pieces, Helen explaining why the doctor's visit was important. Tommy apologizing again. The love between them was obvious. When the food came, Helen insisted on staying while Rebecca ate. They talked. Rebecca learned that Helen owned a business, something to do with hotels. She'd built it from nothing over 30 years. I know what it's like to struggle, Helen said at one point. I grew up with nothing. Worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. Started cleaning hotel rooms and worked my way up. Rebecca found herself opening up too. She told Helen about losing her job, about Amy staying with her sister, about how she was trying so hard to get back on her feet but kept falling further down. I just want my daughter back, Rebecca said, and this time she couldn't stop the tears. I just want to be able to take care of her. Helen listened to everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just listened, really listened, in a way that made Rebecca feel heard for the first time in months. When Rebecca finished eating, Diane brought the takeout container. Helen had already paid for everything, including a generous tip. They all stood up to leave. Helen had called her driver and a nice car was waiting outside. Rebecca, Helen said, reaching into her purse again. She pulled out a business card. I want you to come see me tomorrow. At my office, Rebecca looked at the card. Chen Hospitality Group. There was an address downtown. I don't understand, Rebecca said. Just come, tomorrow at 10. Can you do that? Rebecca nodded slowly, confused but hopeful in a way she hadn't felt in months. Helen smiled. Good, I'll see you then. She took Tommy's hand. Say goodbye to Miss Rebecca, Tommy. Goodbye, Tommy said. And thank you for the food. It was really good. You're welcome, sweetheart. Rebecca watched them get into the car and drive away. She stood on the sidewalk holding her takeout container and the business card, wondering if what just happened was real. Rebecca walked home in a daze. The business card felt heavy in her pocket, like it carried more weight than a simple piece of paper should. She kept touching it, making sure it was still there, making sure she hadn't imagined the whole thing. Back in her apartment, she set the takeout container in the fridge. Tomorrow's meal was secured. That alone felt like a miracle. She pulled out the business card and really looked at it for the first time. Helen Chen, it read. Chief Executive Officer, Chen Hospitality Group. CEO. The woman she'd met in the diner was the CEO of a company. Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she turned the card over. On the back, Helen had written something in neat handwriting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., ask for me at the front desk. Rebecca sat down on her couch and tried to process everything. Why would a CEO want to see her? Was this just going to be Helen giving her some money as a thank you? The thought made Rebecca uncomfortable. She didn't want to be someone's charity case even though she desperately needed help. But something about the way Helen had looked at her in the diner suggested it was more than that. There had been a calculating quality to Helen's gaze, like she was sizing Rebecca up for something specific. Rebecca didn't sleep much that night either, but this time it wasn't just from worry. It was anticipation mixed with fear, hope mixed with doubt. She kept thinking about tomorrow, about what might happen, and trying not to let herself want it too much. The next morning, Rebecca woke up early. She ate half of the meatloaf from the takeout container, saving the rest for later. She took a long shower, grateful the water was still running. She'd been terrified her utilities would be shut off any day now. She put on the nicest clothes she still owned, a pair of black pants that fit okay if she wore a belt, a blue blouse that was a little wrinkled but clean, her one pair of good shoes that didn't have holes in them. She looked at herself in the mirror and tried to see what Helen had seen yesterday. She tried to look like someone worth hiring, worth helping. The bus ride downtown took 40 minutes. Rebecca spent the whole time staring out the window, her stomach in knots. The Chen Hospitality Group building was easy to find. It was one of the tall glass towers in the business district, the kind of building that screamed success and money. Rebecca stood outside for a moment, looking up at it. The last time she'd been in a building like this was for job interviews that went nowhere. She'd learned to expect rejection. It was safer that way, but she walked through those revolving doors anyway. The lobby was beautiful. Marble floors, modern furniture, a huge chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Everything was clean and elegant and expensive looking. Rebecca felt out of place immediately. A young woman sat at the reception desk, her hair pulled back in a perfect bun. She looked up and smiled professionally as Rebecca approached. Good morning. How can I help you? I'm here to see Helen Chen. She asked me to come at 10. The receptionist's eyebrows went up slightly. Do you have an appointment? She told me to ask for her at the front desk. Rebecca pulled out the business card and showed it to her. The receptionist's expression changed. She picked up the phone and spoke quietly into it. Rebecca couldn't hear what she was saying, but she saw the woman glance at her a few times. After a moment, the receptionist hung up.
Someone will be down to get you shortly.
Please have a seat. Rebecca sat in one of the comfortable chairs in the waiting area. She watched people come and go. Everyone looked confident and purposeful. They all belonged here. She didn't. 10 minutes later, a man in a nice suit stepped out of the elevator. Rebecca? She stood up quickly. Yes, that's me. I'm David, Mrs. Chen's executive assistant. She's ready to see you. Follow me, please. They rode the elevator up to the 20th floor. David made small talk about the weather, but Rebecca barely heard him. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst out of her chest. The elevator doors opened to a beautiful office space. More marble, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city. David led her through a maze of hallways until they reached a large door at the end. He knocked twice, then opened it. Mrs. Chen, your 10 o'clock is here. Thank you, David. Send her in. Rebecca stepped into the office and the door closed behind her. Helen was sitting behind a huge desk, but she stood up immediately when she saw Rebecca. You came, Helen said, smiling warmly. I'm so glad. Thank you for inviting me, Rebecca said. I still don't really understand why. Sit, please. Helen gestured to the chairs in front of her desk.
Can I get you anything?
Coffee? Water? I'm fine, thank you. They both sat down. Helen looked different today. She was wearing a business suit, her hair styled perfectly, makeup professionally done, but her eyes were just as kind as they'd been yesterday. I bet you're confused about why I asked you to come here, Helen said. A little bit, yes. Helen leaned forward, her hands folded on the desk. Rebecca, yesterday you did something extraordinary. You gave away your last meal to a child you didn't know. Do you understand how rare that is? Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same. No, Helen said firmly. They wouldn't have. I saw everyone else in that diner. They all looked away, but you didn't. Even though you had nothing, you gave everything. He was just a little boy who was hungry. Exactly. Helen smiled. You saw a child in need and you helped him. You didn't think about what it would cost you. You just did what was right. Rebecca didn't know what to say to that. After you left yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Helen continued. I went home and I talked to my husband about what happened. I told him about this woman who gave her last meal to Tommy. Do you know what he said? Rebecca shook her head. He said, that's the kind of person we need here. Helen paused. Rebecca, I want to offer you a job. The words hung in the air. Rebecca was sure she'd heard wrong. I'm sorry, what? A job? Here at Chen Hospitality Group. Rebecca's mind went blank. Then it started racing. A job here? In this building? With this company? I don't understand, she managed to say. You don't know anything about me. You don't know if I'm qualified, if I have experience. Actually, I do know. Helen pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. After our meeting yesterday, I did some research. I hope you don't mind. She opened the folder and Rebecca saw her own resume inside. Her work history. References. You worked at the Riverside Hotel for 18 months, Helen said. Front desk, then reception supervisor. Your manager there said you were one of the best employees they'd ever had. Professional, kind, great with guests. They only let you go because of budget cuts, not performance. Rebecca felt dizzy. You called my old job? I called 3 of your references. They all said the same thing. That you're reliable, compassionate, and excellent with people. Helen closed the folder. Those are the exact qualities I need for a new position we're creating. What position? Helen stood up and walked to the window. Rebecca followed her movement. They looked out over the city together. I've built this company over 30 years, Helen said. We own 15 hotels across the country. Luxury properties, 4- and 5-star ratings. We're successful by every measure that matters to investors. She turned to look at Rebecca. But somewhere along the way, we lost something. We got so focused on efficiency and profit margins that we forgot the most important thing, the human element, the compassion. Helen walked back to her desk but didn't sit down. I've been thinking about this for months. We need someone who can help us remember what hospitality really means. Not just good service, but genuine care for people. Someone who can train our staff to see guests as human beings, not just room numbers or credit cards. And you think I can do that? Rebecca asked quietly. I know you can. Yesterday proved it. Helen picked up the folder again. Your work history shows you have the experience. Your references show you have the skills. But what you did in that diner showed me you have something that can't be taught. You have a genuinely good heart. Rebecca felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them back. The position is called Director of Guest Experience, Helen continued. You'd be working directly with me to develop new training programs. You'd visit our properties, work with our staff, help us create a culture of real care and compassion in every hotel we run. Director? Rebecca whispered. That was a management position. A serious position. The salary is $90,000 a year to start. Full benefits. Health insurance, dental, vision. 2 weeks vacation. There's also a signing bonus of $5,000. Rebecca's legs felt weak. She gripped the arms of the chair. $90,000? That was more than double what she'd made at her last job. That was enough to get her apartment caught up. Enough to get Amy back home. Enough to finally breathe again. I know this is a lot to take in, Helen said gently. You don't have to answer right now. Take some time to think about it. Yes, Rebecca said suddenly. Yes, you need time to think? No, yes, I'll take the job. Rebecca was crying now, couldn't stop the tears even if she wanted to. Yes, please, thank you. Helen smiled and Rebecca saw that her eyes were wet too. Then welcome to Chen Hospitality Group. They talked for another hour. Helen explained more about the role, about the company, about what she envisioned. Rebecca listened, still half convinced this was all a dream she'd wake up from. "Can I ask you something?" Rebecca said at one point. "Of course. Why are you really doing this? And please tell me the truth." Helen was quiet for a moment. Then she walked back to the window. 32 years ago, I was living in my car," she said. "I was 28 years old, just divorced with a 2-year-old daughter. I had $3 to my name and no idea how I was going to make it." She turned back to Rebecca. "I went to a restaurant and I spent my last $2 on a cup of soup. While I was eating, a woman came in. She was dressed in a business suit, looked successful. She sat down next to me at the counter and we started talking. I don't know why I opened up to her, but I did. I told her everything." Helen's voice got soft. "She offered me a job, right there in that restaurant. She owned a small hotel and needed someone at the front desk. She said she saw something in me, something that told her I'd be good at it. She took a chance on a broke, desperate woman living in her car." Rebecca understood now. "That job saved my life," Helen continued. "It gave me the chance to get back on my feet, to provide for my daughter, to build something. And eventually I learned the business well enough to start my own company." "What happened to her?" "The woman who helped you? She passed away 10 years ago. But before she did, I got to thank her properly. I got to show her what her kindness had created." Helen smiled sadly. "She told me that the best way to thank her was to do the same for someone else someday. And that's what you're doing now," Rebecca said. "That's what I'm trying to do. When I saw you yesterday, saw what you did for Tommy even though you had nothing. I saw myself 32 years ago. But I also saw something more. I saw the person I needed for this company, someone who really understands what it means to care for people." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "I won't let you down. I know you won't." Helen extended her hand. "We'll get all the paperwork sorted this week. You can start next Monday. Does that work?" Rebecca shook her hand. "That's perfect." As Rebecca left the building an hour later, stepping back out into the sunshine, she felt like she was walking on air. She had a job. A real job. One that paid enough to change her life completely. She pulled out her phone and called her sister. "Amy?" she said when her daughter got on the line. "Baby, Mommy has some really good news. I'm coming to get you. We're going home." The first week at Chen Hospitality Group felt like stepping into a completely different world. Rebecca showed up Monday morning wearing a new outfit her sister had helped her buy over the weekend. Nothing fancy, just professional clothes that fit properly and didn't have worn spots or loose threads. David, Helen's assistant, met her in the lobby and took her up to the 20th floor. But instead of going to Helen's office, he led her to a smaller office 3 doors down. "This is yours," he said, opening the door. Rebecca stepped inside and felt her breath catch. The office had a window overlooking the city. There was a desk with a new computer, a bookshelf, a comfortable chair. Her name was already on the door. Director Rebecca Martinez, guest experience. "Mrs. Chen wanted you to have time to settle in before you started the real work," David explained. "She'll meet with you this afternoon. For now, just get familiar with everything. HR will be by shortly with your paperwork." After he left, Rebecca sat down at her desk and just stared around the room. Her office. She had an office. She had to resist the urge to pinch herself. The signing bonus had hit her account Friday afternoon. $5,000. The first thing Rebecca did was pay her back rent. Mr. Patterson had been shocked when she showed up with cash for everything she owed plus the next 2 months. "I got a job," she'd told him, beaming. "A really good job. I'm happy for you," he'd said, and he actually seemed to mean it. Saturday, she'd gone to her sister's house and brought Amy home. Her daughter had cried with happiness, clinging to Rebecca like she was afraid to let go. "Are we going to be okay now, Mommy?" Amy had asked. "Yes, baby," Rebecca had promised. "We're going to be just fine." Now, sitting in her new office on Monday morning, Rebecca felt like she could finally breathe for the first time in months. The constant weight of fear and worry that had been pressing down on her chest was starting to lift. The next few days were a whirlwind. Rebecca met with different department heads, learning about how the company operated. She toured the corporate offices, met dozens of employees, tried to absorb an overwhelming amount of information. On Thursday afternoon, Helen called her into her office for their first real working meeting. "How are you settling in?" Helen asked. "It's incredible," Rebecca said honestly. Everyone's been so welcoming. I'm still trying to learn everything, but I'm excited about it. Good, because I want to start discussing the actual work. Helen pulled out several folders. These are guest satisfaction surveys from our hotels over the past 6 months. I want you to read through them. Really read them. Tell me what you see. Rebecca took the folders back to her office and spent the rest of the day going through them. The surveys were from guests who'd stayed at various Chen hospitality properties. Most of the ratings were good. 4 stars, 4.5 stars, some 5s, the occasional 3. But as she read the comments, Rebecca started to notice a pattern. The compliments were always about the physical aspects of the hotels. Clean rooms, nice amenities, good locations. The criticisms, when they appeared, were almost always about feeling like they weren't seen or valued as individuals. The staff was efficient but not friendly. Everything was professional but felt cold. Good service, but no one seemed to actually care whether we enjoyed our stay. Rebecca made notes as she read. By the end of the day, she had several pages of observations. The next morning, she met with Helen again. "What did you find?" Helen asked. Rebecca laid out her notes. "The hotels are doing everything right technically. Clean rooms, functioning amenities, efficient service. But guests don't feel connected to the staff. It's like staying in a nice machine rather than being cared for by real people." Helen nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I've been seeing. What do you think we should do about it?" This was it. The moment Rebecca had been nervous about. She was supposed to have answers, solutions. She was the director of guest experience, but she'd only been here a week. "I need to see it for myself," Rebecca said. "I need to visit the hotels, talk to the staff, understand what's happening on the ground level. I can't design solutions sitting in an office." Helen smiled. "Perfect answer. How soon can you travel?" "Travel? I want you to visit 3 of our properties over the next 2 weeks. Spend a few days at each one. Don't tell them you're corporate. Check in as a guest. Experience what our customers experience. Talk to staff when you can, but do it naturally. Then we'll discuss what you learned." Rebecca felt a flutter of nervousness. She'd never done anything like this before. "Which hotels?" "I'll have David arrange everything. He'll book your room, set up your travel. You'll fly out Monday." That weekend, Rebecca explained to Amy that she'd be traveling for work. Amy wasn't happy about it, but Rebecca's sister agreed to stay with her while Rebecca was gone. "This is part of my new job, baby," Rebecca explained. "I need to travel sometimes. But I'll call you every night, okay?" Monday morning, Rebecca boarded a plane for the first time in years. She was flying to Chicago to visit one of the company's flagship hotels. She had her work laptop, a notebook for observations, and a nervous energy thrumming through her. The hotel was beautiful, a historic building that had been renovated into a luxury property. High ceilings, elegant furnishings, a grand lobby with marble columns. Rebecca checked in at the front desk. The clerk was professional, efficient. She processed Rebecca's reservation quickly, explained the amenities, handed over the room keys with a practiced smile. But there was no warmth in it. No genuine welcome. It was like being processed through a system. Rebecca thanked her and went up to her room. It was lovely. Comfortable bed, nice bathroom, everything clean and well-maintained. But something felt off. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. Over the next 2 days, Rebecca observed everything. She ate in the hotel restaurant, where the servers were polite but distant. She used the gym, where the attendant barely looked up from his phone. She asked the concierge for restaurant recommendations, and he printed out a list without asking what kind of food she liked or what the occasion was. Everyone was doing their job. No one was doing anything wrong, but no one seemed to actually care. On her last evening there, Rebecca was sitting in the hotel bar, making notes on her laptop. The bartender came over. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. "I'm okay, thank you," Rebecca said. The bartender started to walk away, but then she paused. "You've been here a few days, right? I've seen you around." "Yes, checking out tomorrow. Business or pleasure?" "Business," Rebecca said. The bartender nodded. She was younger, maybe mid-20s, with tired eyes. "Let me know if you need anything." Something in her tone made Rebecca look up. "Actually, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you like working here?" The bartender looked surprised by the question. She glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "Can I be honest?" "Please." "The job is fine. The pay is decent. Benefits are good, but..." She trailed off. "But what?" It doesn't feel like we're actually helping people, you know? It's just processing them. Check them in, serve them drinks, take their money, check them out. I used to work at this small bed and breakfast, and we actually got to know the guests. We'd talk to them, learn about them, make their stay special. Here, we're just supposed to be efficient. Rebecca wrote that down. Have you told management how you feel? The bartender laughed softly. Management doesn't care what we think. We're just supposed to follow the procedures in the manual. After the bartender walked away, Rebecca sat there thinking. This was the problem. The staff wanted to connect with guests, but they'd been trained to be efficient robots instead. She visited 2 more hotels over the next week and a half. Different cities, different properties, same story. Professional service with no soul. Staff who wanted to care but had been taught that caring took too much time. When Rebecca got back to the office, she had pages and pages of notes. She'd talked to dozens of employees, observed hundreds of interactions, stayed in 3 different properties. Helen called her in the day after she returned. Tell me everything, Helen said. Rebecca took a deep breath and laid it all out. The observations. The conversations. The patterns she'd seen everywhere. The problem isn't that the staff doesn't care, Rebecca explained. It's that we've trained them not to. Everything is about efficiency. Check-in should take no more than 3 minutes. Table service should follow exact steps. There are scripts for everything. We've turned hospitality into an assembly line. Helen listened intently, not interrupting. The employees I talked to, most of them actually want to make guests feel welcome and valued. But they've been taught that's not what matters. Speed matters. Following procedures matters. Actual connection with guests is seen as wasting time. So what do we do? Helen asked. This was the moment Rebecca had been building to. She pulled out a proposal she'd been working on during her flights home. We need to completely rethink our training program, she said. We need to teach staff that efficiency without care is just automation. That it's okay to take an extra minute to really talk to someone. That it's good to remember a guest's name or ask about their day. She laid out her proposal on Helen's desk. It was detailed, covering everything from initial employee training to ongoing development, to how managers should evaluate performance. I want to create something called the Heart of Hospitality program, Rebecca explained. It would teach our employees that they're not just service providers. They're the people who make a stranger's day better, who help someone feel welcome in an unfamiliar place, who turn a hotel stay into a memory. Helen picked up the proposal and started reading through it. Rebecca waited, her heart pounding. She'd put everything into this. If Helen didn't like it, after what felt like forever, Helen looked up. Her eyes were shining. This is exactly what we need, she said. When can you start implementing it? Rebecca felt relief flood through her. Really? Really? This is brilliant, Rebecca. You've identified the exact problem and created a real solution. Helen paused. But I want to add something to your proposal. What's that? I want you to pilot this program at 1 hotel first. Pick whichever property you think needs it most. Spend 3 months there working directly with the staff, implementing your training, showing them what real hospitality looks like. 3 months? Away from home? Rebecca's first thought was Amy. Helen seemed to read her mind. I know you have a daughter. We'll set you up in a corporate apartment. We'll fly you home every other weekend. And we'll give you a temporary increase in salary to cover any additional childcare costs. Rebecca thought about it. 3 months was a long time, but this was her chance to actually make a difference, to prove that her ideas could work. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Which hotel do you want? Rebecca already knew the answer. Chicago. The staff there wants to do better. I could feel it. They just need someone to show them how. Helen stood up and extended her hand. Then Chicago it is. You leave in 2 weeks. That gives you time to prepare your training materials and to make arrangements at home. As Rebecca shook her hand, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror. This was real. She was really going to do this. That night she told Amy about Chicago. 3 months? Amy's lower lip trembled. That's so long, Mommy. I know, baby. But I'll come home every other weekend, and we'll talk every single night on video chat. You can show me your homework and tell me about school. Why do you have to go? Rebecca pulled her daughter into her lap. Remember how Mommy got this job? Because I helped a little boy who needed food? Amy nodded. Well, now I get to help lots of people. I get to teach people how to be kinder and more caring. But to do that, I need to go to Chicago for a little while. Amy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, like a superhero. Rebecca smiled. Not exactly like a superhero. I think you're like a superhero, Amy said. You help people. Rebecca hugged her daughter tight, hoping she was making the right choice. Hoping this would all be worth it. The corporate apartment in Chicago was nicer than anywhere Rebecca had ever lived. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a kitchen she barely knew how to use, but it felt empty without Amy. Every night before bed, Rebecca would video chat with her daughter, and every night it got a little harder to say goodbye. Only 10 more weeks, baby, Rebecca would say. Then Mommy comes home. Only 10 more weeks, Amy would repeat, but her voice always sounded sad. The first day at the Chicago hotel, Rebecca gathered the staff for a meeting. About 40 people showed up, from front desk clerks to housekeepers to restaurant servers to maintenance workers. They all looked curious but wary. Corporate visits usually meant criticism or new rules they wouldn't like. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Martinez, she started. I'm here for the next 3 months to work with all of you on something new we're calling the Heart of Hospitality program. She saw a few eye rolls. A couple of people crossed their arms. She didn't blame them. They probably thought this was just another corporate initiative that would create more work. I know what you're thinking, Rebecca continued. Another training program. More stuff to memorize, more boxes to check. She paused. But this isn't like that. This is about remembering why we got into hospitality in the first place. She told them a story, not about her job or the company. She told them about a diner and a little boy who was hungry, and how she'd given him her last meal even though she had nothing. I didn't help him because someone told me to, she said. I helped him because it was the right thing to do. Because when you see someone who needs help, you help them. That's it. That's what hospitality really means. The room was quiet now. People were actually listening. Over the next 3 months, I'm going to work alongside each of you. I want to learn your jobs, understand your challenges, and together we're going to figure out how to bring real care and connection back into what we do. After the meeting, the bartender Rebecca had talked to weeks ago came up to her. Her name was Lauren. You're the woman who was taking notes at the bar, Lauren said. You work for corporate? I do, Rebecca admitted. I should have told you that night, but I wanted to understand what working here was really like. So you lied to us? Rebecca felt that like a punch. Not lied. I wanted the truth. And you gave it to me. And now I'm here to try to fix the things you told me about. Lauren studied her for a moment. We'll see, she said and walked away. Rebecca knew she had to prove herself. Words meant nothing. She needed to show the staff she was serious. She started working shifts alongside different employees. One day she'd be at the front desk learning check-in procedures. The next day she'd be making beds with the housekeeping staff. She worked in the kitchen, served tables in the restaurant, cleaned the gym equipment. Some employees were suspicious at first. Why would a corporate director be scrubbing toilets or hauling trash? But Rebecca kept showing up, kept working, kept asking questions. Why do we rush through check-in? She asked the front desk manager one day. Corporate says average check-in should be under 3 minutes, he replied. We get measured on it. But what if the guest wants to talk? What if they need recommendations or have questions? The manager shrugged. We're supposed to keep it efficient. If they have questions, we point them to the concierge. What if we stopped timing check-ins? Rebecca suggested. What if we just focused on making each guest feel welcome, whether it takes 2 minutes or 10? The manager looked at her like she was crazy. Corporate would never allow that. I am corporate, Rebecca reminded him. And I'm telling you it's okay. Slowly, she started making changes. Small ones at first. She changed the employee manual to remove the time limits. She created new training modules that focused on genuine interactions instead of scripted responses. She started a practice where employees could share stories about meaningful guest interactions at weekly meetings. But the biggest change came from something unexpected. About a month into her time in Chicago, Rebecca was working at the front desk when an elderly couple came in to check in. They looked exhausted from travel and the woman was using a walker.